Hey there friends, another trade idea coming at you. In this one we're going to be talking about Draftkings. The ticker symbol is DKNG. The company's just coming off of its investor day and there's a lot of bullishness which I think could present a good opportunity for us in this one. When we look at the option market for Draftkings, we see that of the total option contracts, 87.5% of those are call options versus 12% being put options. When we look at market chameleon, we can see the same trend arises here with 84 roughly making up call options and 16% making up the put options. You can also note that the implied volatility is still pretty low on this one, but the reason why I wanted to point this one out is because I caught a quick glimpse of the final trades section from CNBC, and in this one the option trader from CNBC noted that there's unusual option activity for Draftkings, so take a listen at this one.
Dr. J.
DraftKings, Scott, they're buying the August 90 calls right now. Love it.
Joe T.
So yeah, in this quick clip he mentions that investors are buying the August 90 calls, meaning that there's a lot of optimism for the stock to potentially reach 90 by August. And when we look at some of the news that's been going on for the company, there's really not much that stands out besides its recent investor day presentation. And just to kind of get a quick summary of the rally, this article I think does a good job of that, where you can see that analysts are backing up the company again now that the company's announcing a lot of good news from their presentation, and it could potentially be going into an oligopoly market, which Draftkings could come out as one of the key players in that market. So there's a lot of potential there, and even some analysts are raising the price target to 80. So a lot of bullishness there for the stock. When we look at the presentation decks, which I wanted to share with you guys too, I think it's really interesting to know and kind of cool to see kind of the market potential for Draftkings. They're noting that out of all the operators in the online sports betting market, they're currently the ones sitting with most penetration in the most states. So in a winner take all kind of market, I think that the company could actually be could achieve a pretty massive scale, especially if online sports betting reaches regulatory approval. So this might even be a good investment to make, and with such bullishness on the option market for the stock, the levels now might be a good level to kind of get into the stock if you're looking to invest, because we might not see these levels until who knows when. So you can see here as well that the market is set to grow. At least I think they're specifically pointing to New Jersey for some reason, but the market's set to grow like really crazy. So if they actually end up being a good market leader in this specific segment, then there's a lot of potential up there for growth. Now, when we look at the positions that investors are taking, we want to look at the option chain, and based on what the CNBC option trader was mentioning, he said that their investors were buying the 90 strike price calls for August 20. And when we look at that, we see that there really isn't much high volume for any of these other strike prices on the call side. And on the put side, you can see that the volume is almost non-existent. But the one that stands out is this 90, which is in fact the one that they point out in the video. And you see there that there's just like a huge volume coming in. When we take a look at that specifically by looking at the chain on bar chart, we can see that the 90 here has a huge ratio of the volume against the open interest, which could mean that in this case investors are rushing to open into this contract, into the specific strike price by virtue of this huge influx in volume that we're seeing here. So they're rushing in, traded into this position, and going forward we should see that volume being reflected in the open interest. And I think this is also pretty bullish when you think about the strike. Investors are thinking that the stock could reach 90 by at least August 20, which is kind of crazy. And also, did want to point out that Market Chameleon notes that this expiration is pretty close to their earnings, which is estimated for either May 28th or June 7th. So they could potentially be a play leading up to good news, up to their earnings. So when we look at what that translates to into dollars, we see for that 90 strike price on August 20 of that 16,000 that recently opened the position, that comes out to be a trade of roughly 10.6 million, which is just huge, right? So now I want to try to answer kind of whether or not the stock can hit the prices that investors think it will, which is this 90 strike price. And when we look at the chart and just do some quick analysis, there's really a lot of positive indicators. First off, you can notice that the stock, since it's been entered the markets, I guess, it's been just going straight up. And there's this pretty bullish trend that's developing with these purple lines here. You see it's just creating a funnel up to the top, and it's just kind of trending up. Another really bullish indicator that I've noticed by just doing some quick trend analysis is you're seeing this kind of bullish flag, which I noted by the pole, the flag with this orange line here, and sort of the top of the flag triangle with this red line, and then the bottom of the flag with this purple line here. And you can see the stock from peak to trough has been consolidating within this flag pattern. And look at where we're kind of coming to now. You can see the stock is trying to break out of this pattern. So interestingly enough, I think there's huge potential to the upside if this pattern continues, and if there's any more positive news that comes out, I think for sure the stock can just rocket from here. On the downside, though, there is some potential indicators that you want to keep an eye out for, which one of them being this red line here, right? This 64 roughly level for either support or resistance that was previously established here, and support levels that are being established here, right? So you can see that the stock broke this resistance and then came back up here and is kind of using this level now as sort of support. So that's one level to be on the lookout for. If we break past that level, then you definitely would see the stock potentially bouncing off of this trend line here, either from the flag pattern or from the overall two-line purple trends that this huge funnel is being created from. So we could potentially see the stock coming back down any of these levels along this purple line, which are really 55 to 56, 57, 58, 60, 62, 63, roughly 64. So you can see levels coming back down to anywhere around this trend line at the bottom. But on the upside, just looking at where this pattern is being set by this peak and the trough, the upside is just massive. Could easily reach past 70, so up to 77, and the chart doesn't go beyond that, but easily break past that, and I think has a lot of potential to reaching that 90. So when we look at what our position would be, I think, if I had to bet, I think my money would be on where the smart money is going. That 10 million super out of the money call for the stock and kind of far out there, I think is actually a good play. And also considering that some of the sports teams are set to really blow up now that the economy will start to recover. And I think a lot of people are betting on a summer where there's a lot more sports and things like that being aired on TV, and more teams and things like that. So I think the stock could actually benefit from that, which is kind of the market that they're in. So a lot more of that social market you could see benefit the stock here. So the trade idea really would be to follow the smart money on the August 20 calls for the 90, and looking at an entry point for the 10-day moving average, or the 10-day simple moving average, which is roughly around this 63.58 level. And that 63.58 really is established when you look at the 10-day moving average, which I could draw on the chart, but from here you can see they have the 5-day and the 20-day, but they don't have a 10-day. So I just pulled it up from investing.com. You can see on the daily technical analysis, their 10-day moving average is roughly 63.58, which is pretty close to this red line here that we saw, that 64.54. So I think that's a really good indicator there, especially if we're kind of following this longer term play towards August. So anywhere above that line would be a good entry point in the up bullish market, and even in the down bullish market. So if it's below that line, then that's also a good indicator that the stock broke past that support level and is now going back down. And then the target levels on the upside are as follows, again based off of previous levels of resistance, with it potentially going to 90 on some of the more potential catalysts or positive catalysts that we kind of talked about. So these are really there set as a guide, but I think the stock could easily break past that if it does break past that flag pattern that we saw. And again, our stop loss or stop for this position would be with the stock coming back down below that support, to that support level roughly. And on the downside, I think a good play would be to get more short term, since when you look at the flag pattern, this could potentially go up until at least April 18th at the most, right, if it does follow this pattern and consolidate around here. So I think a good play would be on the put side if you were to go on the opposite side, depending on your specific idea on this. I think you could get the April 16th 60 puts, because we noticed that the price action roughly falls around and ends up tipping around this 60-ish level. So the 60 put seems like a really good strategy, and there's pretty decent volume in the option chain as well, I believe, with there being roughly more here on the put side. So that 60 put, and on the downside, our target levels are as follows here. So the stop loss again would be back with the stock back up to 63. So that's the idea right there. Let me know what you guys think. I think this might be an interesting one to watch. And that's it. Thanks again for watching.